When she arrived here, she was a very sick young girl.
Her cancer was just relentless at that point.
There's Alex.
During that month-long stay in the hospital where she told us she wanted to set up a lemonade stand.
I raise money.
For what?
Cancer research.
Liz said, I'm so afraid that nobody's going to come and she's going to be disappointed.
Alex's goal for today was to raise $1 million worldwide.
$1 million seemed like an impossible goal.
That's a lot of lemonade.
I see this little girl on Oprah, and I was like, oh my God. I said, that's it. And I called my wife up and I said, Nat, I found it. I found what we're going to do.
Just the phone calls coming in and the people wanting, individuals wanting to do more.
Alex, while battling her own cancer diagnosis, was thinking about all the other kids. It just grabbed me.
How much money do you hope to raise?
$1 million.
We were all thinking, that's so heartwarming, and we hope that can happen, but could it really?
Growing the lemonade stand, that wasn't a priority for us. It was more about what would become of Alex and what would happen to our family in the long run.
We moved from Storrs, Connecticut to West Hartford, Connecticut, really so we could be closer to the hospital where Alex was being treated.
My husband, Bill, and I lived next door to Liz and Jay Scott on Clifton Avenue in West Hartford. At the time, Liz and Jay had Patrick and Alex. They were just the nicest family.
Life was different, and the life we thought we were building wasn't something that fit for us anymore. And Alex started to be sick when she was about 9 months old. We had to take her to the emergency room, and she really never seemed to recover from that. So we went on for a few months, really trying to figure out what was wrong with her.
And they said they thought maybe she was just colicky, but she said Patrick was colicky, and she knew colicky. She knew it was something more.
So from Halloween to January, she was going to the doctor at least once a week.
Honey, look at Mommy.
I do remember it was a Sunday in January where I came home from work and Alex was crying. And Liz said she's been like this all day. I've given her the most Tylenol that I can give her because the doctor just told us give her Tylenol when she's cranky. So we called the doctor's office again and we got a different doctor. The guy who answered the call on that Sunday said that it was sending up red flags to him and that we should bring her in on Monday. We hung up the phone and we decided we would take her to the emergency room in Hartford.
And I remember the neurologist examining her. Her first thing she said, I'll never forget, was, she doesn't have reflexes in her legs. When was the last time you brought her to the doctor? And I'll never forget because the other person who was in the room with her immediately jumped in and said, they've had her at the doctor many times. And that's when she said, I really think she has something going on her spine, but the MRI will tell us more.
Yeah, we really knew something was wrong when the anesthesiologist that put her under left. Like, my God, they're bringing in backup anesthesiologists now. What's going on? It's kind of scary.
I remember my mother's voice cracking and just saying, the news is about as bad as it can be.
They called us into a room and said they were ready to talk to us, and they sat us down and they gave us a box of tissues. The doctors came in and they told us that she did have something growing on her spine.
Well, they told us the tumor was called neuroblastoma, which is a childhood tumor, and prepared us for the fact that it is difficult to treat and can take a very long time with uncertain results.
I remember going to the hospital and watching her crawl around, and it was leading up to the day that she would have her first major surgery.
It was January 17th, 1997. And she went in really early. The surgery went on forever.
And I remember I was so surprised that Dr. Altman showed up and he sat in the waiting room with us.
He was in our room at 5 a.m. and he was with us at 1 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I think it's 27, 28 years now since she came. She was really a baby then.
Dr. Altman, our oncologist.
I clearly was not a surgeon, so I couldn't do anything with my hands in that regard, but you do what you can. And in that case, I think what I could do was just be with them.
They felt like they got, I think the words were like 98% of the tumor and that she was doing well. So I remember we felt like, okay, this is all good news. And then we went into the room and we were with her and they told us we needed to leave. Remember that? They said, you need to leave. And you can tell there was like a little bit of a sense of panic in the room.
And they brought her back in to surgery.
It was almost midnight. And I remember Liz looking up at the clock and saying it's her birthday, because it was just a couple minutes before her first birthday. Her tumor was so large that it had grown around her spinal cord. And when they removed that sort of whole mass, the blood vessel came with it. So she had spinal cord damage from her very first surgery. So we were told on her first birthday, if she survived her cancer, that she would probably never walk, that she would be paralyzed from the chest down. Gosh, how unfair what she has been dealt, and what kind of life is she going to have?
February 3rd, we took him in for a tonsillectomy, and the surgeon came in and said, I got the tonsils out, but behind the tonsil there was an almond-sized tumor.
And I remember when we were in Pittsburgh saying and thinking, I just want to know one person with stage 4 neuroblastoma that will survive. I couldn't find one.
Neuroblastoma is a cancer of the peripheral nervous system, so the nerves outside of the brain. And it is a disease that arises during the development.
Arden was 16 months old. She was having some low-grade fevers. We thought she had the stomach flu. We brought her to the pediatrician, and he found her primary tumor on her left adrenal gland.
A shock to Arden and all of us for how healthy she was one week, and then the next week fighting for her life.
Neuroblastoma, especially advanced neuroblastoma, back then was it was a death sentence for the child.
She was paralyzed right around the time she was diagnosed. Within a couple weeks, she started showing signs of being able to move her legs a little bit when we asked her to.
You notice she's moving her left leg and crawling and dragging her right leg, lifting up a little bit.
She started physical therapy.
Mommy's watching you. Ooh, good stare. Are you able to, Daddy?
And the most amazing thing to me was she learned how to walk without being able to feel her legs.
She's really moving today.
We're almost there.
Hey, kick. You gotta kick. You gotta kick with this leg. That's a good.
She got to the point where she could walk without braces, without a walker.
Take your time. Excellent.
Wow.
Excellent. Now come on up.
We had to make decisions about how to proceed with surgery and to go ahead and to start with chemotherapy.
It worked. For a few months, her tumor shrunk, and then it would stop working. And so then they'd have to try something different.
Chemotherapy, in many ways, is a very non-specific treatment because it will kill any rapidly dividing cell.
She had 6 surgeries to remove tumors and months of chemotherapy and some radiation therapy. After that, we were told that it had grown back. So all those surgeries were for nothing. And also that was the first time that her bones showed disease in them.
So I do remember Jeff, he looked at the doctors and he said, so then he won't reach adulthood. And they both said no. They said now the treatment's going to change from trying to save his life to just giving him more time.
I remember several times crying to David and saying, I can't bury my baby.
And that's when she was considered incurable at that point. When she was 3 going on 4. So that's what led us to have to decide whether we wanted to stop treating her, put her on palliative care hospice, and do some things as a family. And we decided to go for the experimental treatments and found a doctor in Philadelphia, Dr. Maris.
We had just opened a clinical trial of the targeted radiotherapy drug MIBG. Alex was one of the very first patients treated on the clinical trial.
They were aiming radioactive instead of just bombing the child's whole body with radiation.
Alex knew right away that it was helping her. She told her mom before any of us recognized that it was helping her that she felt better.
I remember the phrase they used was about 70% reduction in her cancer. That was a big trip for us. I mean, it really changed our lives.
To see that it not only was very effective in reducing significantly the amount of tumor in her body, but also was safe to her was a game-changing event for our program.
They went from not having any treatment options before the MIBG treatment, and then after they said, listen, we want to move forward with a stem cell transplant. During that month-long stay in the hospital, where she told us she wanted to set up a lemonade stand.
It was January in Connecticut.
We said it's kind of cold. It's kind of cold outside to have a lemonade stand.
Finally, in June of 2000, she said, now it's getting hot out and we still haven't had my lemonade stand. I said, what do you want to buy so badly? And in my mind, I thought we could just skip the lemonade stand and go to the store that day and put an end to it. And she said, I'm not keeping the money. I'm giving it to my doctor so they can help kids the way they helped me. I thought maybe she didn't know she would only raise $5 or $10. And she said, I don't care. I'll do it anyways.
Liz said, I'm so afraid that nobody's going to come and she's going to be disappointed. Was it okay if I call Hartford Current? And she said, I think they're probably going to think you're crazy, but sure, go ahead.
She got her Cheerios ready the night before because she didn't want to be late for her lemonade stand.
It was such a busy day, right? So I remember specific moments of it.
I was gonna say it was very
but I
busy.
feel like
It was the traffic that I remember.
Yeah, just a line of cars.
Somebody must be having a party in the neighborhood. And I said, that's great because it'll drum up business for Alex. And then as I got closer and I saw the crowd on their front lawn, I realized, oh my gosh, all these cars are here for Alex.
So the day of the stand, an old man came up. He didn't say anything. I kind of remember maybe he had tears in his eyes.
Yeah, he did.
And he just gave Alex a card. And we found that card recently because we saved it. And when we opened it, it said, Alex, your parents must be proud of you because I sure am. And it had $100 in it.
Oh my God.
I remember just looking around saying, this is crazy. I think she's going to raise like $500. And then I heard, the next day that she had raised $2,000.
We had, at that time, the Children's Cancer Fund, the Yukon Children's Cancer Fund. We got the first check.
I've been wanting to raise money for them for a while. Just
that
because,
was my idea.
Right.
I think she was the impetus behind it. I think it was really her idea.
She said, when she was getting into bed, she was exhausted. And she said, this was the best thing that's ever happened to me.
We would have stayed.
I know.
Yeah.
We knew. We understood.
Like if we would have stayed in this neighborhood,
So
honestly, we'd
perfect.
probably still be living in that house.
I think once we saw that, we had a real breakthrough in how it was impacting Alex, led to their decision to move to Philadelphia.
A lot of people don't realize that you can't get the same treatment for your kid everywhere in the country.
We stayed at the Ronald McDonald House in Philadelphia, and that's where we met Alex. And Alex and Teresa hit it off, having dinner together, throwing balls back and forth, telling stories.
This little girl had neuroblastoma like Alex. Her and Teresa had this bond. They were close in age. They had the same doctors.
Dr. Maris brought in the scans and showed her that it was back, and it was back with a vengeance.
I told her one day that Teresa had died, and she said, why? And I said, because they couldn't stop her cancer. I think it was the first time that she realized that if her tumor didn't go away, it could take her life. And she got a little upset. She said she didn't want to talk about it. But then about 2 weeks later, she said she was going to have her lemonade stand for Teresa.
We built her a lemonade stand, and that one was up here, right in front of this window. And it has the sign that you would recognize from a lot of Alex's lemonade materials, the hand-painted sign and the yellow stand.
People were already donating through the mail, but people just came from all over the Philadelphia area and maybe beyond.
It was just stunning to see the number of people that turned out and how the very simple message, cup at a time, we're going to make a major difference for children with cancer.
On Saturday, I drove over and pulled up, and meeting Jay and Liz and Alex, it was something special. And because just the fact that she ran the stand. Like, it wasn't like mom and dad, it was her, she was in charge.
She was my manager.
She was very focused on those days. She took it very seriously, and I think it was a little stressful for her, but she knew it was important.
So when patients come to our clinic, they become quite close to many other children with cancer, whether they have neuroblastoma or a brain tumor or leukemia. And seeing what other children were going through really impacted Alex a lot.
She knew we were giving money to the hospital. You know, her question was, what are they doing with the money? And I said, well, they're using it to research neuroblastoma. In my mind, it was very much about finding a cure for Alex. That was the thing I wanted the most in the entire world. She started shaking her head and she said, that is so selfish. We should be giving money to all hospitals for all kids' cancers. And tears in my eyes because I knew she was right. I felt like such a small person for making this about trying to cure her instead of making it about all kids with cancer. But Alex was thinking bigger, and she was thinking beyond herself. She was only 6 years old when she said that.
The fourth stand overall, so 2003.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was in the same spot, but it was pouring rain. Pouring rain.
There were so many people here. Mud tracked into the house.
Yeah, and I think we had a carpet at the time.
We had to tear up the carpet, I think. Media people were like trying to get in her face, following her inside.
I remember her sitting there with me, doing the interview, and then she turned to me and said, okay, I'm ready to go back in now.
She had started not feeling well the day before with these like screeching headaches, and that was very stressful.
We asked some of the people that were staying here all day, why were you doing that? Like, why did you stay all day in the pouring rain? And they said, I just wanted to take in what was happening. One of the times that Alex was on the Today Show, the audience just started going crazy, and they started trying to hand the interviewer money.
It makes me feel good that I'm helping people.
She said something that moved them. They ended up getting a bucket with our two older boys, Patrick and Eddie, and walking around the plaza.
I think as I got older into elementary school, it started to set in when my parents would have conversations with me just how sick she was.
And her cancer was just relentless at that point. And just every day making her weaker and just getting her closer to not being able to fight it off anymore.
Alex was adamant to keep going, and that last lemonade stand for her was incredibly important.
Okay, so what is the difference between this year's lemonade stand and last year's?
This year's a lot bigger.
And how much money do you hope to raise?
$1 million.
We thought it was a crazy idea and said, Alex, why would you tell a reporter that you're going to raise $1 million? And
If enough people help with donations and go to aid stands, then I think we could do it.
I thought this amazing thing she's accomplished is going to disappoint her now, because I couldn't imagine her being able to raise $1 million before she passed away. But she always believed there would be a big value in creating awareness, and there clearly was.
I got home early from work one day. My TV happened to be on already, and I see this little girl on Oprah, and I was like, oh my God.
And Alex today has lemonade stands and has raised more than $200,000 for cancer research. So Alex, what's the most expensive cup of lemonade you've ever sold?
$500.
For a cup?
I said, that's it. And I called my wife up and I said, Nat, I found it. I found what we're going to do.
The fact that Alex, while battling her own cancer diagnosis and fighting her own journey, was thinking about all the other kids. It just grabbed me, and I said, if she's devoting her life to doing this, then I want to help others as well.
Just a donation, yep.
Thank you very much.
Donate out lemonade!
Things were just building and building, and we decided after the chaos of 2003 that we would move the stand to the elementary school.
By the time Alex made it to her lemonade stand Saturday, it was a full-blown media event, complete with huge crowds, cameras, and cash. Lots of cash. And the story was the same at lemonade stands in every state, from Minnesota to Oklahoma to Florida and beyond.
Just the phone calls coming in and the people wanting, individuals wanting to do more. Magic. Really magic.
We did need to do both some selling of lemonade and medical attention for Alex.
She was at about 750,000, 800,000, and the donations were coming in every day. I said, but I don't know that she's going to be here to see that goal met.
Despite what we were able to do in the past to extend Alex's life with quality, we truly were out of options.
she was getting weak, losing weight. We could just tell. So we haven't opened this in a long time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. I think I must have taken this one over. Oh, it's when we went to pick a chamois, our puppy. The puppy's in her lap. The first time we met her. She liked to accessorize, so a couple of cute little purses. A tree. She has a lot of tree themes in her writing and her photos. The wind blows when it is fall. The leaves change colors and fall off the trees. It rains a lot when it is fall. After it has been fall for a little while, the trees lose their leaves.
I think this is actually kind of interesting. And the interesting part is it's missing Alex. This is the height chart for our boys as they grew up. They'd write the date and their initials.
Jay called and said that Alex had passed away. Truly, from that moment on, life would never quite be the same. Having to tell my mother that she was gone, to know that my mother was going through the pain of losing a grandchild, and watching a child lose a child just seemed, it was tough.
And every year, there are milestones that she doesn't get to have, and they're reminded of it. But I think they're driven because they don't want anybody else to have to go through that same pain.
Some thought of her fondly as the lemonade girl who raises money for cancer research. Today, a viewing was held in Wynwood, Montgomery County for 8-year-old Alexandra Scott, who died Sunday from a pediatric cancer called neuroblastoma.
Let's see. What's the luckiest thing that ever happened to you? I raised a lot of money for the hospital. I raised a lot of money for the hospital. That's the luckiest thing that ever happened to her.
Before Alex passed away, she was at about 750,000, 800,000. And the donations were coming in every day. I said, but I don't know that she's going to be here to see that goal met. It was very hard for her. It was very hard for all of us. And we all wanted her to reach her goal. And people were continuing to have lemonade stands and companies were supporting. And one day I got a phone call and was told that we were going to get a large donation to take her over her goal. So as soon as I hung up, I turned to her and I said, Alex, you met your goal, you raised $1 million. And she just sat up and clapped her hands and she laid back down with a big smile and really just let out a big sigh.
I think once she got to that point, I think she was at peace.
She died 10 days later, so she was pretty clearly hanging on to see that goal met, and she did it.
After she died, the outpouring from people and the money that people were donating was even greater than when she was alive.
We heard from other families whose kids were fighting cancer, and I think those are the emails that affected me the most.
Other families that said that we needed to continue what she started because they thought it could help their kids. Went from Alex's Lemonade Stand to Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation, essentially. It became our own foundation. We went from packing lemonade kits in our garage to packing lemonade kits in the office. We went from having our home phone shared to our office phone shared.
Today, Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation is one of the largest pediatric cancer research organizations in the country. Because cancer does not stop or wait for anything. We have raised more than $300 million. We've funded 1,500 research projects. We've helped over 20,000 families. There's nothing like meeting a family whose child was literally cured because of something new that was funded because of research.
And he's doing well.
He is, yeah, he is.
If you're doing pediatric cancer research, you come to Alex Lemonade Stand Foundation. And it's just an incredible organization, and we couldn't do our work without this kind of support.
The research we funded with Dr. Yael Mosey at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, I think, is a perfect example of how putting the funding in the right hands at the right time can lead to cures for kids with cancer.
After many decades of trying to discover what might be the gene that causes the inherited form of this very rare childhood cancer, neuroblastoma, and we were able to identify ALK, this oncogene, anaplastic lymphoma kinase, as being really central to a subset of these kids.
We met Dr. Mosey, and I remember thinking, we don't have any hope. And she said that there was a clinical trial. Would you like a spot?
We found out that she had ALK, and we were told about a drug.
Taking lorlatinib is such a different paradigm from our standard treatments, which are all poisons. It's changed the landscape to be able to take a pill. And it doesn't affect the healthy cells.
It wasn't making him sick, and his hair was starting to grow back. And
he was hungry all the time.
Thanks to our friends at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, we had Alex's tumor from 1999 sequenced. From that, we learned that her tumor had a specific mutation that is implicated in some hard-to-treat cancers.
And that's what we eventually learned from Alex's tumor, that her tumor has this ALK mutation.
Were Alex diagnosed today, she would have a less toxic, more effective treatment available to her from the start. A treatment that would have offered her the cure that she quietly wished for on her last birthday.
Sorry. And that's incredibly gratifying to know, we were a part of that process, but it's still painful to say we couldn't help her.
It's been a game changer. Kids who were destined to die are alive today.
Hi, Mom.
him sitting here being a goofball is a direct result of people that have donated to Alex's Lemonade Stand Foundation. I mean, without those funds, he may not be sitting here today.
And I think there may be a perception that childhood cancer has a lot of funding, because why wouldn't it? And that's just not the reality. Actually relies very much on philanthropy and organizations like Alex's to push forward the research.
Often those traditional funding mechanisms aren't suitable because they don't allow you to take risk, they don't allow the scale of what needs to be done.
A lesson I learned from my mentors that cure has to come with also not the devastating side effects of that we've seen with chemotherapy, that we've seen with radiation, so that kids can go on, and not have those, all of those, tremendous morbidities from our therapies.
Some of the other really challenging cases are ones we have certain tumor types, such as some of the brain tumors, brainstem gliomas, and others, where we know from the first time we meet the patient and the family what the prognosis is and that we don't have good enough therapies to treat them.
When a kid dies from childhood cancer, Liz and I take it really personally that we should be doing more. Because if we're not going to do it, who is?
We have made major discoveries about the fundamental basis of childhood cancers. And we are now at this tipping point of using that information to develop new drugs, new therapies.
It's great to be able to see that the research has now allowed some targeted therapies to be able to be done in children. And I've had patients where I say sometimes you had a bone marrow transplant to erase your leukemia. I said someday there'll be a pill for this.
I had a baby come into the hospital with a big mass on her neck and face. This tumor has the gene, and I've got a pill for that, right? So you don't need all the chemo. We don't need to do surgery. We don't need to do central lines. I'm going to send you home with some medicine, right? And I'll see you in clinic in a few days.
And we want to make it so that that's what happens for all kids with cancer.
We know, we have track record now. We know that these approaches can work. We know curing childhood cancer is possible.
She was my first best friend, and she was like the prototype for a protective older sister.
Sometimes if I'm in a tough situation, I'll think back about how strong Alex was in this situation. If she could get through it, then I definitely could.
Whenever I'm doing anything, I always like to ask myself, am I making the most of my life because she didn't have that opportunity?
And there are people in this world that are my age or older that have not had the impact that she has had on other people's lives.
And when you watch somebody like Lily, or Cameron, or Lucy, and when we see those kids, that lights us up inside, man. That is a powerful feeling. Yes, that's why we do this.
You can have a lemonade stand at a wedding. You can have a lemonade stand at a birthday party. You can raise money in lots of different ways. So it's so easy and beautiful, and everybody can do it.
Just keep believing and think of her as the amazing, fabulous little girl that she was. She had this dream, and she was so determined, and it came true.
She was determined other kids were not going to suffer like she and these children around her were suffering, that she was going to do something And she did it.